Russia is rapidly ramping up weapons production and preparing for a prolonged confrontation with NATO. These conclusions have been voiced by the security services of several Western countries. How did the alliance leadership respond to these threats? How much could NATO's defense budget increase? Why will air defense become a priority? And what about support for Ukraine? Let's break it down. The Kremlin could launch military operations against NATO member countries before 2030. These are the conclusions drawn by analysts at the Institute for the Study of War. As early as 2025, the Russian Federation will produce 1,500 tanks, 3,000 armored vehicles, and 200 Iskander missiles. These figures were announced by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. According to him, Russia produces as many weapons in 3 months as NATO countries do in a year. That's why the alliance needs to strengthen its air and missile defenses, develop and implement new technologies, and increase defense spending from 3.5% to 5%.
The exact details are classified, but we need a 400% increase in air and missile defense. We see in Ukraine how Russia delivers terror from above. So we will strengthen the shield that protects our skies. Our militaries also need thousands more armored vehicles and tanks, millions more artillery shells. And we must double our enabling capabilities, such as logistics, supply, transportation, and medical support. Allies will invest in more warships and aircraft. To give just one example, America's allies will procure at least 700 F-35 fighter jets in total.
Russian officials are already creating conditions to withdraw from international arms control agreements. And in the Baltic countries, the Kremlin might resort to provocations under the pretense of protecting the so-called Russian-speaking population, similar to the operation to annex Crimea in 2014. This was stated by the head of Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, Bruno Kohl. He believes that in this way, Putin wants to test NATO's resolve to defend its allies. Kohl is convinced that negotiating with Moscow right now is pointless, since the Kremlin dictator is set on escalation and will not change his plans.
Ukraine is for Moscow, a stopover on the road to a collision course with the alliance. They no longer believe that NATO's Article 5 works, and they would like to test it. They want to return NATO to the state it was in at the end of the 1990s. They want to push America out of Europe and will use any means necessary to achieve this. Bruno Kohl, head of the German Federal Intelligence Service, in an interview with NTV.
The German government is actively working to strengthen sanctions pressure on Russia. According to Chancellor Friedrich Merz, this is one of the most effective ways to stop Putin's war machine. He described the recent strikes by the Russian army on Ukrainian cities as a deliberate attempt to create a bloodbath and accused Russia of serious war crimes.
Russia ruthlessly attacked the civilian population using numerous drones and cruise missiles. This was anything but a proportional response to the very precise Ukrainian strikes on military air bases and infrastructure last week. Russia truly wanted to create a bloodbath. The fact that they succeeded only to a very limited extent is due solely to the highly effective Ukrainian defense. Once again, Russia chooses escalation instead of negotiations.
It is important to note that the Russian army is once again using North Korean ballistic missiles to strike Ukraine. And in North Korea, they will soon begin mass production of drones modeled after Russian and Iranian designs. Such military cooperation between dictatorial regimes is very dangerous, not only for Europe, but also for East and Southeast Asia. Killing and expanding the geography of war, that's what the Kremlin dictator wants.
Obvious that this is an escalation. For months now, Russia has been steadily increasing the number of weapons used in its strikes. This is a steady trend, and it means that in Moscow, they are not afraid of anyone in the world. None of those who have called for an end to the killings and for meaningful negotiations to stop the war. Putin wants to keep killing, and is taking advantage of the fact that he isn't getting a strong response.
The NATO Secretary General also reminded everyone about the dangerous cooperation between Moscow, North Korea, and Iran. According to him, without stability in Ukraine, security for the alliance is impossible. That's why support for Kyiv will also be one of the main topics at the upcoming summit in The Hague. NATO will keep its promise to grant Ukraine membership in the alliance, even if it isn't written in the final document, Mark Rutte assured.
President Putin does not act like someone who is interested in peace. Russia continues to strike civilian targets in Ukraine, day after day, night after night. This is violence for the sake of violence. We fully support President Trump's efforts to stop the bloodshed. The people of Ukraine deserve a just and lasting peace. NATO's practical and political support to Ukraine continues. Our long-term support is not about prolonging the war. It is about helping Ukraine defend itself today and preventing any future aggression. NATO stands with Ukraine now and through the challenges ahead.
Ukraine will definitely become a member of the North Atlantic Alliance because the war started by Russia has become a threat to all of Europe, said Estonian President Alar Karis in an interview with the Lithuanian national broadcaster. He specifically emphasized, Tallinn will continue to provide military, humanitarian, and diplomatic assistance to Kyiv for as long as it takes.
Just to remind you, when we started our discussions about being a NATO member, in Estonia, we still had Russian troops on our ground. And not everybody believed that Estonia or Latvia and Lithuania are going to be part of NATO. But here we are. We are NATO members and allies. And recently, Finland and Sweden joined NATO as well. So let's see how things develop.
It's important to note that there is interest in Ukraine's NATO membership within the alliance itself. Modern methods of warfare are changing at lightning speed. And as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Transformation Pierre Vandier noted, the armies of many countries could learn creativity from their Ukrainian colleagues. As an example, he mentioned the security service of Ukraine's web operation, which resulted in the destruction of 41 Russian military aircraft.
It was a real revolution. We are entering a dynamic era where armies must rely not only on large-scale planning, but also on adaptive planning. We will see continuous innovation where week after week, month after month, or year after year, we will be able to invent what we did not expect. Pierre Vandier, NATO Supreme Allied Commander Transformation, in an interview with Agence France-Presse.
At the NATO summit in The Hague, they are planning to consider the possibility of including contributions for Ukraine's defense in a new spending target. This insider information was shared by Bloomberg. The alliance members will also try to ensure the full participation of the United States in the bloc. So the point about allocating 5% of GDP to defense will most likely be adopted. Let me remind you, this is something Donald Trump insists on. And as for Russia, they are planning to recognize it as a threat to Euro-Atlantic security. The fact that the summit's final document is being prepared before it even starts is standard practice. But no one can say how the discussion will go or what new points might be added. Kyiv has received an official invitation to the NATO summit in The Hague and is really counting on the support of its partners. As the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry emphasized, no third country, including Russia, has the right to veto Ukraine's accession to NATO. And Ukraine's security and its membership in the alliance are indivisible.